Modern Warfare 2 is one of the best games ever made, hands down, genuinely. But it is funny how perfectly the game fits as an analogy to describe the current political climate in the world today. Because for far too long, the left and right have just been fighting and arguing over economic and social policies. I think what's most striking about the whole issue of left v right is the fact that it's kind of become so violent, and like I don't just mean in a physical sense, though obviously that there's been plenty of that too. But I'm talking more about the chronic online battle, arguing about pronouns and gay rights and trans rights and war, social welfare, whatever it is. But I just want to get this out of the way too. Like, whether you're left or right, I'm not here to belittle you and your beliefs. For this one video, I'm just going to be playing devil's advocate, and I'm going to be in the center between both sides, because for what I'm about to talk about, it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum I fall on. It doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you fall on either. The fact is, the richest 1% own almost half of the world's wealth, and the poorest half of the world own just 0.75%, not even 1%. And that fact itself, I'm not sniping at the right, saying that we all need to live in a communist society. And I'm not nodding to the left either, saying that, many of them seem to think that pronouns are a more pressing issue. So the point of this is that you, watching this video, are definitely not in the richest 1%. You may not be in the bottom 50% either, but you can relate a hell of a lot more to those people than the elite billionaires who are in the 1% that call all the shots, whether you're left or right. The top 81 billionaires have more wealth than half of the world combined, and yet they are taxed the least. Half of them live in regions where there's just no tax on wealth whatsoever. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the left and right are locked in this battle where they're just arguing about the most minuscule of details. And even when those issues, can be more pressing, like immigration or social housing, they do it with a stubbornness that, and it's through the lens that they're right and the other side are wrong. And that's the issue I have. We're all left to fight, amongst one another, while the richer just get richer and richer, and none of our problems get fixed, left or right wing policy applied. So the battle shouldn't be left versus right. It should be up versus down. Because if you're a right wing, diehard Christian conservative American patriot, or if you're a trans rights activist left wing nutty that believes communism is the only solution, you're both missing the one thing that you have in common. You both want the world to be a better place. You just have a different idea of what realizing that vision means, both, socially and economically. You want the same thing in many respects. The left and right don't have to be enemies. Not in today's world. Obviously, there are plenty on both sides who will only take a hardline stance and will be violent to each other, but that's not the majority, contrary to what the left think about the right and what the right think about the left. You both want the world to be a better place. But you know who doesn't? Billionaires. Because if the world was one big, truly equal communist society, or a truly free capitalistic market without lobbying, without corruption, the billionaires lose. They lose because in that situation, they do not have the power. And they need power to win. They use power to control both sides, and the longer the left and right spend arguing with each other, the more both sides are distracted from the real problem. Whether you're on the right wing, whether you're on the left wing, you're being priced out of your home, you're dealing with the same bullshit inflation of economic goods, and you're dealing with the same wealth inequality, just on a different part of the spectrum, no matter your age, gender, pronouns, or race. That's it. And I'm going to talk now about, how those two sides are divided on specific issues. And I think a good first example here to use is immigration, because they're both so vastly, divided on it. Like, take your typical left-winger. They'll argue that it's important to take in asylum seekers, have diversity because that's so important. They'll work and pay taxes, whatever the argument is. And then if you take your typical right winger, they'll say it's important to protect a nation's culture and identity, that too much diversification does the opposite. And they'll say that migrants just put a strain on things like housing markets, or that even giving social benefits to migrants when there are homeless people in said country is unfair. And I know that that's a simplification. I know it ignores, the somewhat racist undertone that can be found in some people on the far right, but there is merit in what both the left and right are saying on this argument. So what they need is a compromise. You need some migration, but not too much. You need to provide them with housing, but not at the expense of the native population. And yeah, you need them to work and take jobs, but you also kind of need systems in place that will make it so that there are no diversity hires, because diversity hiring is just complete bullshit. And that kind of leads me on to my next point, which is what the left kind of don't understand about the right. So Thomas Hyland Eriksson, he was a Norwegian anthropologist who died last year. He wrote a book called Overheating, which explains the issue with the globalized world we live in, and that issue is acceleration. Obviously, we live in a globalized world, but it's been trending in that direction for quite a while. But since the age of the internet, that globalization has just massively accelerated. It's become so much easier for, different ideas and cultures to clash, and it's become so much easier to migrate from one place or country to another. I mean, the means of travel, like how interconnected we are, it's just so much easier and more fluid. And obviously that includes, economic stuff too, like trade and whatever. But the fact is that the world has accelerated into this global network, and it's done so at a pace that is just far too quick for humanity to handle. And that's why, you have war, conflict and identity issues just all over the world. And that itself isn't even a left and right issue. That's just kind of the way it is because of how fast we've accelerated into this globalized world. It's gone too quickly for our societies to adapt to it. And I feel the left tend to ignore this fact, and the right then are even more concerned with it because they see that ignorance, I suppose. And, things like identity, religious views or beliefs that they've always known, the right, they're being stripped away from them in an instant. And that's also what's accelerated the divide between the two sides, and that's kind of also why the solutions put forth by both are just, to stop whatever issue they're arguing about. They're just becoming more polarized. And a good example of that too is Second Amendment rights in the US, because, this is a very simplified version of it, but the left say no guns, the right say more guns. And the fact is that both sides want the mass shooting problem to end. They just have different views on how to get there. And now it's kind of exploded into this pointless argument because neither side is willing to listen to the other. And the bottom line is that nothing changes. Like, more guns won't solve the mass shooting problem. Neither will stripping Americans of their Second Amendment rights, which are protected by the Constitution. So the only thing that's going to solve that issue is unity between both sides, listening to one another, and the, discourse they need to address the root cause. Because in America, that's a cultural problem. It's one that they've developed quite uniquely compared to the rest of the world. And it's not going to be solved anytime soon because neither party are willing to work with one another. And I don't just mean political parties, I just mean left and right. So now we're going to bring in the third party to this. They're not left, they're not right, they're the elite. The elite aren't just those guys from Halo. The elite create the rules. They make those rules so that they're exempt from them. They fleece all of us. They hoard the wealth, and they do whatever they can to increase their profits, while the rest of us grunts are suffering, and we're too busy arguing with each other to realize what they're actually doing, all from the top. And that is starting to shift slowly. I mean, there are obviously examples of the left and right realizing what they've got in common and that the elite are actually the problem. I mean, take Israel and AIPAC's lobbying, I guess, of the American politicians and the complete, I suppose, hijack of American foreign policy carried out by AIPAC in Israel. That's kind of the one I've noticed. It's where the two sides seem to realize they've got common ground. And it's slowly shifting, but there needs to be more. And if you remember, at the start of this video, I said I would use the Modern Warfare 2 campaign as an analogy because it fits perfectly here. And I'm talking about the real Modern Warfare 2 campaign, not that shitty reboot. I haven't played it and I won't. But Captain Price and his pals in Task Force 141, they're fighting Vladimir Makarov and his Russian ultranationalists. And the two sides spend pretty much the entire game trying to kill each other. But the key is that both sides think that General Shepard is working with them to help achieve that goal. They both think he's on their side, and then they find out that in fact he's not. He's not with either of them. Shepard is just on his own, playing them both because it helps him to achieve his own selfish aims. He does not care about anyone but himself. So does that remind you of anything? It might be hard to pinpoint which character I'm placing as left, which one I'm placing as right. Obviously, I mean, your own interpretation of that depends on which side of the spectrum you fall on. But I can guarantee that you've no problem figuring out which character is supposed to represent the elite.
Makarov, this is Price. Shepard's a war hero now. He's got your operations playbook and he's got a fine check. Give me what you got, Shepard, and I'll take care of the rest. I know you can hear me on this channel, Makarov. You and I both know you won't last a week.
And neither will you.
Makarov, you ever hear the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Price, one day you're going to find that cuts both ways. Shepard is using Site Hotel Bravo. You know where it is. I'll see you, pal.
Looking forward to it. Give my regards to Zakhaev if you get there first.